So, what are you laughing at? There's nothing funny that's happening right now. I have not told a joke yet. Don't know why you're laughing. So, that was it's my new belt. Just like a cowboy. No, I mean, I was thinking about something this week. For those of you that know me, you'll probably know a little bit about this, but some of you that don't, was born and raised here in Sikeston, and our family, when I was real little, we grew up on Bradley Street, which is, that direction. I can't move my hands because the belt will fall off. Okay, so I tried to fasten it, it won't. I guess I've gotten bigger over the years. I remember growing up when we were little, when I was probably 8 years old, roughly, 6, 7, 8. I remember being able to watch the WWF with my dad and with my brother, Steven. I have a younger brother who's 3 years younger than me, if y'all didn't know. And man, we would watch some wrestling. It's another way to call it. It might be the more proper way to say it in our parts down here. But we would watch wrestling, and some of you might understand what I'm talking about. Can I get a few head nods, or at least, a little Hulk Hogan in here? Not the bad, like the original Hulkster, Hulkamania. Anybody, right? Ultimate Warrior. Anybody in here? Come on, somebody. Junkyard Dog. Come on. Arf, arf, arf. You remember that? No. He'd get on all fours and he'd bark around. It was crazy. Brutus the Barber Beefcake. I mean, what in the world is happening with these people? Anyway, but I can remember we would wrestle, and we actually, this is not mine, this is Pastor Aaron's, but we had one of these at my house. I totally sold him out, but we had one of these at my house, and whoever won, because when you start watching wrestling on TV, we gotta wrestle. Like commercial comes on. Well, we're gonna go sit here and just watch a commercial. We're gonna wrestle until the next it comes back on. So we would wrestle, and then whoever we deemed was the champion got to wear the belt. After that, I'm gonna give this back to you because this is gonna be super distracting for me. But I remember we would wrestle, and my brother was little. So just think I'm 8, right? So Steven's like 5. So and if those of you who don't know my brother, he's that big around, and he's always been about that big around. And so when we'd wrestle, the person who always got hurt, Steven, he always got hurt. He always got hurt. 98% of the time if we wrestle, he got hurt. It was a rare occasion when Steven did not get hurt, okay? It was just part of it. Now, the reason why I bring that up is we started to learn there's some certain things that we should not do when it comes to wrestling because it's going to hurt someone, right? Okay? And so oftentimes, for instance, I remember when we learned that if Steven jumped off the back of the couch and did a flying elbow drop on someone, probably not a good idea, okay? He would get hurt, okay? And I also remember that when we were pretending like we're coming off the ropes, if I clotheslined Steven at my full sprint, probably not a good idea, okay? Why do I even say that besides that it's funny? I say that because it took us to change something. We had to learn enough or hurt enough. That's really the only time you'll ever change anything in your life. Did you know that? You learn enough or you hurt enough. Now, sometimes when it comes to God, He has to break our will to bless our life. So sometimes God will break us to bless us, and it's a breaking of our will. So what do I mean? Here's another way of looking at it. God blesses the broken. So it's in your brokenness is when you receive the blessing. God will bless you when you realize you're broken. When you think you're not broken, that's called pride. God won't bless that, okay? So today I want to look at a monumental story that reminds us that you can be broken yet blessed. And it's a story of a man named Jacob. Not Jake the Snake Roberts. And not Jake from State Farm. Jacob from the Old Testament. The Jacob story is all about a guy who does not believe he's going to get God's blessing. So he spends his life hurting everybody around him, and he tries to scheme and steal the blessing of God instead of trusting God. So let me give you a little bit of background about Jacob. You got Jacob and his twin brother Esau. Twin brothers, the epitome of sibling rivalry. And the struggle begins before they're both even born. Rebekah, their mother, is pregnant. They're fighting to see who comes out first. Why? Because whoever comes out first is going to get the greater inheritance of Isaac's land and his estate. Esau's born first, but Jacob is grabbing his heel as he's coming out. They're very different boys, very, very, very different. You can go to Genesis 25 and you can see that Jacob convinces Esau to sell his birthright. Now let me pause and help you understand the difference. Esau, not really your honor roll student, but he's a fighter. He's a warrior, and he's loved by Isaac. Jacob, on the other hand, the epitome of a mama's boy. He's a trickster. He's a deceiver. So Jacob convinces Esau to give him his birthright. He actually does it. And you can say, why would he do that? Well, I mean, have you ever been hangry before? You might sell your birthright if you're hangry. When you're hangry, you're hungry, you're angry, and you're tired. I hope you know this. When you're hungry, you're angry, and you're tired, you make bad decisions, okay? So don't make big decisions when you're hangry, okay? That's a separate sermon. That's not what I came here today to tell you. But so Genesis 27, Isaac is on his deathbed, and he's going to pass along the blessing to one of his sons. He wants to pass it along to Esau, is what he's wanting to do. So he tells Esau, go out and get some food. Go out and find the food, bring it back, make me a really good meal, and I'm going to give you my blessing because I'm come to the end of my life. Rebekah hears about it. Of course, she loves Jacob because remember, he's mama's boy. So Rebekah puts some food in the microwave, turns it up to however long she needs to do it. Tells Jacob, like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pretend that you're your brother Esau. We're going to make you smell like him. We're going to put some fur on you because he's like really hairy and you're not. So we got to really really come up with a really good plan because Isaac's not going to fall for it. But then again, we got a good plan. So he does all of these things to deceive his dad, and he gets the blessing. Esau finds out about it. The warrior is very upset, rightfully so, very angry, and he makes a promise. I'm going to kill Jacob. I'm going to kill him. He has deceived me not once, but twice. Rebekah realizes that Esau ain't playing. This is for real. And Jacob, mama's boy, you can't talk yourself out of this one. So you best, instead of trying to use your mouth, you better use your legs. You better get out of here. You better run, right? Run, Forrest, run. Now you got to get out. But one thing I want to point out in Genesis 28, so we're moving just a little closer to the story. Genesis 28, as Jacob is leaving, he lies down and has this dream at Bethel. You have to understand this is a very important part about the story. Check this out. Genesis 28. I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on belongs to you. I'm giving it to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. Now check it out. One day, I'll bring you back to this land, which if you're Jacob, you're going to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't have to do that. We just not come back. You forgot, God, my brother's there, and he wants to kill me. So how about you just bless me and do all that somewhere else? One day I'll bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you. So as you continue to read on, he goes and lives with Uncle Laban. He's very successful in what he's doing. It's pretty awesome. Then he ends up getting some different wives. You can read through all that. But the relationship between him and Laban starts to go bad, and Laban's sons, and everything's not going very well. Him and Laban come up with a treaty, like, I'm going to be over here, you're going to be over here. Just don't cross over here, like we're not getting along. Then in Genesis 31, verse 3, then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your father and grandfather, to your relatives there, and I will be with you. Who's his relative? Esau. He's like, oh man, no. Can I just not go there? Like I just do. And here's what happens. Oftentimes, God will call you to go back somewhere to face your past. So ahead of this, because again, Jacob's the deceiver. He's always got a plan to weasel his way out of something. Jacob sends Esau ahead of all this a peace offering. He sends him a bunch of his livestock and tries to think in his mind, okay, if I send all of these things to him, maybe, just maybe, I can buy him into a good relationship. But then he gets a report back after they take the stuff to Esau. They come back and they're like, hey, guess what? He has 400 warriors ready to go. And they're coming this way. So if you're Jacob, you have to be thinking, he has not let go of the past. He remembers, he wants to kill me. And rightfully so. So now Jacob has a decision to make. It's the eve before he's going to have to face his brother Esau. The night before. Yes, he has a promise from God. But the facts still remain. Your brother is coming with 400 warriors. And the last thing you know is he wants to kill you. I don't know about you, but all of us, I believe, have times in our lives where we've been broken, we've ran away from our past, we've turned away from God, and we've had to make some decisions now as I face the decisions that I once made. They're coming back to me. What am I going to do? And I'm going to show you 3 things that Jacob had to decide. It's a fork in the road, either or. You can't pick both. It's one or the other. So all of these decisions are the same for each one of us today. His first decision he had to make was this. He had to choose audience or alone. Audience or alone. What do I mean by that? Let's read Genesis 32, verse 24. Jacob was left alone. He was alone. Alone. And a man, capital M, right? Jacob is lowercase m. Who is capital M? God, that's it. So Jacob and God, a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. He's alone with God. And when you get alone with God, you have to come to grips with the parts of your story that you're not proud of. And that's what Jacob's having to do right now. He has to come to terms with the truth that he lied to his father. He stole from his brother. He has now abandoned his family. And do I stay and go back to the audience, or do I get alone with God? The first step in his brokenness, becoming a blessing, was getting alone with God. And today, some of you need to step away from your audience. You need to step away from your accolades, and you need to get alone with God. You need a deep soul search. You need to come face to face with what you've been running from. Let me say it this way. Isolation from God is an invitation for elimination from the call of God on your life. Isolation from God, not isolation by itself, but isolation from God's an invitation for elimination from the call of God on your life. So you have to make a decision today. Am I going to stay comfortable in the audience that tells me what I want to hear? Or am I going to get alone with God and face what's ahead of me that needs to change? The second decision he had to make was, do I run or do I wrestle? Do I run or do I wrestle? Let me read that again in verse 24. Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. Now, I know some of you don't want to hear that. It's a problem for you. God, who loves me, cares for me, is crazy about me. Like I heard your songs y'all were singing about. He wants to wrestle? I don't like that God. I prefer a God who says, I've heard your cry and I've come to deliver you. Yea, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will walk with you through it. I want a God who says, come to me all you weary and burdened and I will give you rest. And God says, no, if you want this blessing, you're going to have to wrestle. Because oftentimes, the blessing requires wrestling. Let me say it again. Oftentimes, the blessing requires wrestling. The blessing requires wrestling. I hope you know this. Jacob wasn't the only person in Scripture who wrestled with God because of something they did in their past. Go check out David, Samson, Elijah, Peter. You want me to keep going? See, when your sin catches up with you, you have a choice to make. Do you run or do you wrestle? This is what Jacob is faced with. Let me ask you a question. What are you running from that you need to wrestle with today? What are you running from that you need to wrestle with today? Now, verse 25. Now when he, capital H, he, this is God, saw that he, this is God talking about himself, when God saw that God did not prevail against him. Pause. Time out. Flag on the play. What just happened? God saw that God did not prevail against him. Whoa. God did not prevail? Well, that's not the theology that I know. That's not the theology they told me in Sunday school. I thought theology was this. We serve a God who can move mountains, who can calm seas, who can heal, who can handle all my enemies. And here we have a God who picked a fight, and he can't handle Jacob. It's not even Esau. It's Jacob, the weaker one, the mama's boy. Is Jacob like secretly the champion of the UFC? Is what is happening right here? Let me make this very clear to you. The best way for you to picture what's happening is when I remember when I was 8, and again, my brother was 5, and we'd be wrestling with my dad. And my dad, we'd kind of make it rule like he's got to handicap me because it's not fair. So like, Dad, put your hand behind your back. You got to put one hand behind your back. It's got to be your right hand too. It's not fair. You put your stronger hand behind your back, and you have your left hand out. And now Steve and I are going to wrestle you right now, right? And usually he'd let us win, at least up to a point, right? And that's what you're seeing here with God. Hand behind the back. Like, oh, man, wow, Jacob, you're so strong. Wow, what am I going to do? Never wrestled anything in your life, mama's boy. Here's what's happening. An unstoppable force meets an unmovable object. You ever heard that paradox? An unstoppable force meets an unmovable object. An unstoppable force is God's desire to bless, because you can't stop that. God desires to bless his children. The unmovable object is your selfishness. So God's it can't be stopped. Like he's coming towards us. He wants to bless us, but the one thing they'll throw a brick wall is when we get selfish. So what God is saying here is, yeah, Jacob, you've prevailed. You prevailed at not trusting me. You prevailed at not trusting that I am your provider. You have prevailed at not seeing me as your provider. That's what you won at. Let me put it to you this way. He doesn't wrestle with you to prove his strength. It's to prove your weakness. That's when God wrestles with you. Let me put it to you this way. Here's another way. God doesn't desire a match with you. He desires a moment with you. Okay? He wants a moment with you. And in this moment, as we're watching Jacob wrestle with God, what we're seeing is God's patience. His patience, because he doesn't want any to perish. So what is there left for God to do? Like what, seriously? He's got the unmovable object here, his pride and selfishness in Jacob standing firm in his stubbornness. Verse 25. He touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Now hold up. I know some of you are like, wait. We serve a God who breaks hips? What you're seeing here is a situation where God has to hurt to heal. God has to bring and allow pain so he can show purpose. Jacob is blind to his sickness, so he doesn't even know he needs to be healed. Jacob is blind to know that God is trying to give him a blessing, and so since he's blind to that, he keeps trying to steal blessing. That's pride and that's selfishness. It's being blind. Therefore, God allows breaking for us so that we will submit and surrender to him. The only fight that God really is not going to really win against us is you being stubborn and not giving him your will. I hope you know this. You choose to obey God or not. That's your choice. And here's the thing. God knows what your life would be and could be and the potential you could reach, but outside of his will, you will not get there. And he wants you to see that potential. He wants to see you walk into it, so he will do whatever it takes to get your attention. It's your decision to run or wrestle with God, to submit or stay, to stray or surrender. It's your decision. And the third decision we see Jacob have to face, and you had to face the same one too. Are you going to quit or cling? Quit or cling? Now, I have two daughters. My oldest was up here. She just graduated high school. When we taught her how to swim back in the day, pretty easy. This one was easy. The other one that was playing the piano, not so much. Not so much. She's a little more stubborn. And I would pick her up. And y'all remember this. I'd pick her up and I would try to, I would get in the water with her even, and she'd have a floaties on and everything, and I would try to get her to she'd just grab a hold of me, and I'm peeling her off my body, and I'm just digging her fingernails in, and she won't let go, and and she's screaming, "Daddy, don't do this to me! Why are you going to do I'm going to kill them, blah, blah, blah." She would cling onto me because she knew what? I was her safety. Right? Genesis 32:26. And God said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." But he, Jacob, said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." So now Jacob's not fighting, he's clinging. His will has been broken, and now he's clinging on to God. Why? Because when you're broken, now you understand your dependence is on God. I got to trust him. But it's only in my brokenness that I'll cling to him. And some of you today, you're not clinging to him because you don't recognize your own brokenness. You have pride and you want to say, "No, I got this." Some of you walked in here today and you're in the fight of your life. You're battling depression, cancer, infertility. You've lost your job. You've got shame that you're battling with. I'm telling you, your best option today is to understand your brokenness and cling to the God who will never leave you and never forsake you. Psalm 27:13, "I would have lost heart unless I had believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." What is that saying? I'm clinging to my God because I trust that he can bring goodness out of any situation. Now let me read verse 26 again, because I think we might have missed something. And he said, this is God saying, let me go, for the day breaks. But Jacob said, I will not let go unless you bless me. Bless me. So now we have Jacob. He's broken. He's clinging to God. Up to this point, before all of this, he wanted stuff. He wanted material things. He wanted position. He wanted power. But now, it's not what he's seeking anymore. What blessing does he want now? Genesis 32:27. So God said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And God said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed. So God asked him, what's your name? And he says, Jacob. God says, no, you got a new name now. Let me put it to you this way. God needs you to admit who you are before he launches you into who you're called to be. So some of you here today, that's what's holding you back, is you're not willing to admit you're Jacob. So God can't declare you as Israel. You're stuck in your Jacob, and God is ready to change your name to Israel, but you got to admit that I'm Jacob. God says, yeah, your name was Jacob, it was deceiver, but now it's Israel. Why? Because you wrestled with God, you wrestled with me, and you prevailed. How did you prevail? How did you prevail? You gave me your will. That's how it happened. Jacob didn't prevail. I hope you saw that. Israel prevailed in this. Jacob didn't prevail. Israel prevailed. You have to let your Israel be greater than your Jacob. Listen, God wants to introduce you to a you haven't met yet. Let me say it again. God wants to introduce you to a you haven't met yet. See, God gave him a new name and a new promise, and also gives him a reminder. Here's the reminder. The limp reminded him the rest of his life of where he came from. The blessing he received was proof that God keeps his promises. If you go all the way back to Genesis 28, God said, this is what I'm going to do. And he had to walk in faith, knowing that my brother, who's stronger than me, hates me and is going to kill me. But God said, no, I will be with you. But you got to trust me in this. Verse 29, then Jacob asked, saying, tell me your name, I pray. And why is he saying this? He's realizing this is actually God that I wrestled with. He's in awe. It's kind of like Moses saying, what should I tell them? Like, I just met God. And he said, why is it that you ask about my name? And he blessed him right there. God's saying, you know exactly who I am. I am. I am. That's who I am. You know who I am. You've heard about me. I am. And you have now had an encounter with me. And your life will change forever. Some of you need to understand today that the great I am, he's big enough to save a nation, but he's also big enough to save you. He's big enough to change the hearts of thousands of people, and he's also big enough to change your heart right now. Now we see that Jacob is this last thing. I want to point this out. He's broken and he's blessed at the same time. He's broken and he's blessed. Understand this. It's in our brokenness that we are blessed. It's not without our brokenness that we're blessed. Some of you today are trying to erase your brokenness, thinking that you're going to get blessed because you get rid of it. No, God wants to bless your brokenness. Jesus even taught this about blessing and brokenness, and they go hand in hand. Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 through 10 in the Sermon on the Mount. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him. Are you poor in spirit today? Do you realize your need for him? He's going to bless you, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. But God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God is willing to bless your brokenness if you're willing to wrestle. Are you willing to wrestle? Know this, you're able, through the power of God, to limp right in the middle of your blessing. Now, at the end of the story, it ends like this. Jacob packs up his tent. It's the night before. And he went to face his brother. After wrestling with God, breaking his will, giving God his will, realizing everything has changed now. I'm not Jacob anymore. I'm Israel. God's blessed me in my brokenness. And he gave me a promise, and I'm going to trust him. Genesis 33, 1-4. Now Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him 400 men. Now some of y'all be like, I'm out. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maidservants, and he put the maidservants and the children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before them, and he bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. They wept. What God said was going to happen came to fruition. God was with him, brought him back to the land, and he was not killed. He's very much alive. God's saying, I will deal with your past. I will heal your heart. I will walk with you. If you, this is a word for you, if you will get alone with God, if you'll wrestle with your past, if you'll cling to him like your life depends on it. And listen, if you get alone with God, if you're going to wrestle with him, and if you're going to cling to him, it requires you to get close to him. You can't do any of those things away from him. So some of you today, your problem is proximity. God wants you to get alone with him and wrestle with him so you can cling to him. But that won't happen if you keep creating distance, as you keep running from him. You're ashamed of your brokenness. You're ashamed of your past. You have a wrong understanding of who God is. He is calling you to bring all of that stuff that you have, that baggage that you have, that you're embarrassed about. He's calling you to bring it to him. He wants to bless the broken. Listen, your limp is your testimony. Because there's other people out there that are limping along, and they need to see you limping so they can say, wow, you know what I'm going through. And you can say, absolutely. But guess what? I'm walking different today. I'm healed today because my God, when I went to wrestle with him and I clung to him, he healed my heart and he healed my life. He changed my name. I was Jacob, now I'm Israel. He changed my name. I'm broken, but yeah, I'm blessed. And see, when you encounter Jesus, you can't walk the same anymore. That's the difference. When you encounter God, you cannot walk the same anymore. He changes your walk. He changes your heart. He changes your mind. He changes everything with you. So the question to you today is this. Do you need to be blessed in your brokenness? Do you realize your brokenness? Do you realize that God is welcoming your brokenness to him? Bring me your brokenness. Bring me your past. Bring me your shame. Bring me your anger. Bring me what that person did to you. Bring me your broken heart, and I will heal it. Bring me the thing that makes you feel like you're so unworthy of my presence. No, son, daughter, come into my presence because I want to bless you in your brokenness. There's somebody in here today, and I know it. You need a healing today in your heart, and you do not feel worthy of it today. And God is saying to you right now in this very moment, if you'll trust him, if you'll just trust him, he will take that brokenness and he'll make you whole again. He'll restore you and breathe new life into you.